Thank you very much for attending this session on carbon offsets and insets. However, we just discussed, and none of us are really working on offsets. So I think that shows where the market is going. I think over the last 20 plus years, I worked in climate finance, working on all sorts of offsets and also some insets transactions. And it's exciting to see the momentum around willing to pay for supply chain transformation. And I think we have some excellent speakers here to talk a bit more about the journey that they've been on and how this can be used to actually enact change in supply chains and sourcing landscapes. So my name is Tanja. I'm the co-founder and director of Clarmondial, and I will let each of the panelists introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll have a little chat.
Super. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joseph Gridley. I'm the chief executive of a company called Soil Association Exchange, and we help farmers become more profitable and resilient by focusing on improving the kind of underlying natural assets of their farm.
Thanks, Tanja. So my name is Enda Buckley. I'm the director of sustainability for Carbery Group. Carbery is a food ingredients company with a rich dairy heritage. We're owned by 1,130 dairy farmers in the very south of Ireland. So probably best known for cheese in Ireland. Dubliner cheese would be one of our flagship products. We also make whey protein ingredients. We make alcohol. And then we have a flavors company which goes under the Synergy banner.
Hi everyone, my name is Franco, CEO of Regenagri. Regenagri is a community interest company. We essentially provide a framework for regenerative farming. So it's standards for certifications, including carbon insetting. I will tell you more about the carbon insetting. We are operating globally across the globe, 350,000 farms and approximately 5 million acres of certified farms in our program. Which provide a great opportunity for insetting. Thank you.
Great. And I would be very curious to know who we have in the audience here. So if you represent a private sector group, please, could you raise your hand? Okay, thanks. If you represent an NGO or not-for-profit? Okay, fairly good. Research institutions? Public sector, government? Okay, I think we're still missing a few in the counting, but maybe people are a bit lazy after lunch. Great. How many of you know kind of what insetting means? A fair number, but maybe Franco, you can give them a bit of a sort of your definition of the word, and then maybe also a little bit about your work at Regenagri and how that's a representation of insetting.
Yes, certainly. Thank you. Well, insetting is essentially investing in your own supply chain. Is investing in more resilient farming systems. So investing in the future of your commodities. For Regenagri, insetting is something which comes out of a regenerative approach. So the starting point is regeneration. So farms undertaking a regenerative system, which means working on many different angles, from better farming practices to better soil management, better use of inputs and resources. Landscape as well is very important. And out of this, there are data that are quantified, they are verified, and they are used to measure outcomes. One of the outcomes out of regenerative farming is carbon intensity reductions, and that translates into carbon insetting mechanism. So within Regenagri, essentially, is the insetting is something which we integrate within the usual certification system. Certification for us is providing farms and supply chains a consistent and contextualized framework for implementing, monitoring, and benefiting from climate resilient systems, so regenerative systems. So it should be a full supply chain approach, obviously. We cannot look at insetting talking only to farms. We cannot speak of insetting just talking to brands. What we do is linking the dots, working with farms and retailers that are sourcing, in our case, sourcing Regenagri certified products, and to give them the option to access impact data and insetting supporting certifications of their commodities. On the other side, we are working with farms to ensure they have a stronger market access, a way to claim products as regenerative, at the same time having pathways for accessing some extra financial benefits. Again, insetting is one of the growing streams that are helping farms to get more out of their operations.
Great. I think we're also fortunate here that we have someone that actually works with farmers and even a farmer-owned organization. So I think you also have some experience of developing sort of own internal programs, specifically future-proof. So it'd be great to hear a bit more about the experience on that and what some of the topics that are important to have in mind when actually working with real-life farmers.
Yeah, that's right, Tanya. So we have a program called Future Proof. I might just give you maybe a feel for that. So it's like an internal insetting mechanism. It's funded actually by our subsidiary Synergy, which is our flavors company. So when we started to look at this, I think that a key element to this, Tanya, is actually working with our farmers. So we would have had workshops with our farmers. Where would be the best place to get impact? How could we get tangible, I suppose, engagement with farmers? So the feedback was, keep it simple. Don't, give us a big menu of 20 different options. Please keep it simple and we will engage. And that was our approach. So we started off with 4 measures. So they're in the decarbonization space. There's a soil aspect. There's a water quality element. And they would be the 3 main areas, I suppose, that we're focusing on. And we've a new element now around liming for the second phase. But to the question, certainly, I think that engagement with farmers is key, and listening to them. And I suppose the proof in the pudding is over 90% of our supply now is engaged in Future Proof. We have, over 3 years, we've handed out over 18 million euros. So it's significant. It's about 6,500 euros per supplier. It's 1.25 cent per litre is the actual bonus that a farmer can attain. So it's significant, and I think that piece around keep it simple but impactful, that was our big learning, I would say. And again, it's going to continue to evolve, and we're constantly looking at where is the next thing we can actually bring real impact, because again, we've a net zero pathway, we've a net zero ambition. We've taken out about 100,000 tons of CO2 from our scope 3, largely through Future Proof as well. So again, we're seeing the impact. And I guess it's a nice mechanism to bring farmers with you, because they're getting something for it as well. And a lot of the actions actually typically are cost neutral, I would say, which is important, again, to get that engagement at farm level.
I think that's a very good point. I think just before we were coming in, we were also talking a little bit about some of the sort of challenges, as well as obviously the opportunities around working on some of these insetting programs. So I think, it'd be interesting to hear from your perspective also in terms of what some of the learnings have been on insetting programs and how to make them more effective and work better for farmers.
Yeah, a good question. So for context, we run an insetting program here in the UK called Exchange Market. Works with arable farmers, and they can do anything they want, provided that results in a kind of an emissions reduction on their farm across their production cycle, and they get paid £60 per tonne for every tonne of carbon they remove from their production cycle. Some of the things that we've learned on the good side, one of the great things about carbon is it is a shared problem. This scope 3 thing is, it's your problem, it's the landowner's problem, it's the bank's problem, it's the retailer's problem. And by being a shared problem means that if you design it right, you can actually cost share. And so those different companies, provided they represent different tiers of the value chain, they can share the cost of helping that farmer transition, which is great because the farmer ultimately gets more money, and you're able to drive the similar amount of change. That's been something that works well. Other things that we've seen work well is carbon is actually a huge turn-off to farmers. Most of them don't understand it, they don't like it. So talking about it in other terms. This is money to de-risk some practices that you want to try. This is about, getting your soils to be more resilient. This is about cost reduction. This is about profitability. All of those things are a much better way into the conversation. Just the actual payment itself might be pegged on the corporate side to carbon. Some of the other challenges that we've seen is, and I don't know for you guys, but a lot of the companies we work with, they very specifically want to be doing stuff in this space for a transition period. They want to kickstart work in this area, and then they want it to become status quo. That having good carbon emission factors for milk will just become a sanitary factor to be able to sell into a market. And that, I think, is quite a worrying place because, farmers that are late to this party or farmers that need that premium to keep going, I think they're going to really start to struggle in a couple of years when maybe some of this transition money dries up.
Great. I'll pause here and ask if there's any questions. Nothing on the Slido yet, but PSA, it does exist. So feel free to also, thanks.
Hi, Ashley Allen with Unify. And I just had a quick follow-up question because I'm curious about the pricing mechanism for what you're talking about. Oh, sorry about that. Ashley Allen with Unifruity. And I just have a follow-up question on the carbon pricing. So who is paying the $60 per ton, and what kind of verification is involved in that? Assuming it's not a fully verified carbon credit, because you said no offsetting.
Yeah, so they're not offsets; they are insets. The way we do it is on the one side, companies pay into a fund, so these different tiers of the value chain. And then on the other side, our team work with the farmer. And so we do a kind of before and after carbon footprint. So you've got that kind of counterfactual. If I do these practices, how will that, impact my my carbon numbers? Importantly, we don't just look at carbon. So we do lots of stuff on nutrient balances, nature, soil health as well, so that we're getting a rounded picture. So you're not having that kind of carbon tunnel vision. And then depending how many companies we can match that farmer to. So if that farmer, the perfect scenario is they have the bank that we've got the program, their landowner is in the program, they're selling product into that retailer, and it's going into that processor, then that farmer, is able to get the £60 and it costs, £15, if you like, shared between them. Sometimes a farmer won't be in all four tiers.
I think that's actually quite a good question also to hear like how this program differs from more of an internal funding mechanism, I guess from Carbery Group. And then also, Franco, from your perspective, are you also stacking payments in the same way? So maybe also good to get your feedback.
Absolutely. So for us, it's a full supply chain system. So basically we start with farms. Farms are the ones that are in the Regenagri program. They are the ones that are generating impact, including obviously carbon. Then one piece of the program is a supply chain system. And that supply chain system is essential to create the right links between brands that are claiming Regenagri certified products and the potential, the impact, the carbon that is attached to those products. We work with big farms in Australia, big farms in USA, with small orders in Asia and Africa. What I can say is the system is, there cannot be a formula, a precise formula. The insetting is implemented in different ways, depending on the type of supply chain, the type of products, and also the goals of the companies implementing the insetting. We see brands that are acquiring carbon impact blended with premiums going to the farm. So essentially, in that case, the insetting value is included in the percentage that they pay on top of the base prices of commodities. Can be coffee, can be cotton. There are other cases where insetting is used as a standard way of rewarding. So I pay you for each carbon unit that you generate. But there is a challenge. The challenge is First of all, we are still at the early stages. For me, the challenge is more system-based. So we are growing a lot. It's a program working at scale, but we still see a lot of challenges related to clear knowledge, and not enough knowledge from both sides, brands and super retailers and farms, on how to actually implement an insetting program on a kind of normal business scenario. So not just pilot, but how can insetting be part of an ongoing long-term initiative. So again, it's a system approach. We see many different bits of the puzzle which are moving around. There are obviously challenges around data, around the technical aspect. There are challenges around the legal aspect as well. For example, if you are leasing land, how can, from a legal perspective, a carbon be assigned legally to the farmer and not to the owner of the land? So there are many complications there. But at the end of the day, for us, the insetting is nothing else than a way to allow farms to generate some extra value out of the good practices, the good things that they are doing in terms of regenerative farming.
Great. I mean, I think there's some questions here in terms of what happens if the emissions increase above a baseline figure, and what happens if there's impact from externalities like the weather. We are, interestingly enough, with one of our corporate clients, we did see a big carbon insetting project be subject to a force majeure clause because of extreme weather. And to what extent, are you factoring that into your work also in terms of from a just transition and an equity perspective? And it would be great to hear like how you deal with non-performance, maybe all to all three of you.
So so the insetting program should be based on protocols, on standards, and there are criteria that are hedging against reversals. So if there is a reversal, so something unforeseeable is happening, so there is an increase in emissions, then obviously our insetting program already takes, we call it a risk buffer. A risk buffer is a volume of insetting units that you do not release, but you keep there in case something happens. And when we speak of farming, so in farming there can be many unforeseeable issues like extreme weather events and so on. So again, the system is there to ensure that there is a risk due diligence process as well.
Maybe to both of you, what happens if farmers don't perform, either because they decide not to or because of some extreme event? Do they still get a payment, or what happens?
Yeah, and I can think of an example for us. Actually, we've got a project called Farm Zero C where we're developing a climate neutral dairy farm, and we had a fantastic evolution for about 4 years, and then we had a really bad spring 2024, and ultimately we had an increase in emissions on the farm in 2024, and it was a spike, but again, it's a live biological system, Tanja, and I think that's reality. And I suppose I like Franco's example of the hedging mechanism. I think that's one way you can protect. But again, I think there has to be, I suppose that's reality, and we have to, I suppose, make sure we have mechanisms to deal with that.
Yeah, we always come at it from a perspective of these kind of payments. They get dressed up in fancy technical language, but they're ultimately about giving farmers the confidence to try new practices. And so if on the one hand that's what you're saying to them, and then if there's a force majeure or something goes wrong, and then you clobber them over the head and say, well, all that financial risk's on you, then you're not getting the outcome that you want from this. And so for sure, if a farmer deliberately does not do the things that they set out to do, then they shouldn't be paid. But if Mother Nature is getting in the way, I think you've got to take an equitable approach to that to make sure that kind of risk is shared.
Great. And I think we're getting some really good questions here. Maybe I'll put two of them to you, and then you can choose which one you want to go for. I think one maybe to you is around allocating the removals across different crops, maybe in a supply chain. And maybe you can also comment, Franco, if there are multiple crops in an area. And then also in terms of taking a landscape approach, and I think we're seeing more and more that what happens on the farm is just one thing, but obviously if the surrounding area is trashed, then it has an impact on the farm performance as well. So to what extent are you also looking at the landscape level approaches?
Yes, can I go? Okay, yes. So it's regenerative farming means that one of the key criteria is farms must have multiple crops in rotation. So which means each crop is undergoing an assessment in terms of carbon intensity. What we do is carrying out a greenhouse gas, a carbon footprint quantification for the whole farm, as well as the allocation of that carbon intensity for each of the crops that are produced. And that's essential when we speak of the actual insetting. So if you have a farm producing cotton and soy, there will be a food brand who is interested in the insetting of the soy, but they are not necessarily interested in the insetting units of the cotton. So the allocation of the emissions for each on each of the crops that are produced is I would say essential for the delivery of the actual insetting. And again, the insetting is there for quantification of the impact, and that impact comes from different sources. So there are obviously removals, there is reductions of emissions, and there is a stream of carbon sequestration from biomass, which is more landscape approach. And that is counted in, but counted in a I would say in a small percentage in our case. So we want to push farms to implement a landscape-based approach. They get carbon reductions thanks to that, but only a percentage of that carbon can be allocated to the commodity in order to avoid the point of carbon allocation principles.
Maybe do you also want to comment on the allocation?
Yeah, so briefly, the way we do it is we do a crop-specific carbon calculator. So if they want to put malting barley and winter wheat in, we'll do a crop-specific carbon footprint of that, and then we'll model out the actions that they're going to take, and then we'll do a whole farm one to make sure there's no leakage into other places.
Great. And maybe if you, Enda, would comment on sort of landscape approach, because you obviously work with many farmers across a wide, I imagine, quite varied landscape. But if do you also look at the wider landscape risks and opportunities?
Absolutely. And I referenced the Farm Zero C project, I suppose, and our thinking is we want to replicate that across all our supply. So it is holistic. There's a lot of talk about carbon, but I guess for us, water quality actually is a huge issue in Ireland because we avail of a thing called the nitrates derogation. The nature piece, I think, is growing, and there's a lot more of a focus on nature and biodiversity, which is good. And again, we would have targets within our own supply chain for that. So it's holistic, and obviously it's adhering to regenerative principles as well, I think is key. So yeah, that wider landscape piece. And I suppose we think, and I think it's the same for the UK, we think we have a natural advantage in Ireland, to be honest, when we compare to some other countries in terms of biodiversity. So that landscape approach is a really important tenet, and I see that even growing more and more.
I think it gives you right. There's an interesting question there about kind of the evolution into kind of paying for nature outcomes. I think that ties quite nicely to this landscape point, because carbon is a kind of fungible thing, right? And so there is space to do insetting. I think when it comes to nature and water, it would be completely useless to have a kind of, in my opinion, fungible token of nature, because they are services that are helping a farm be more profitable. It's the rain to make the grass grow, and the trees to stop the erosion. And so if you kind of got the wrong stack of what the nature outcomes were that you wanted, you wouldn't be driving the kind of resilient, profitable farm that you wanted.
And maybe I think, as we're coming to the last question, I think there's always been a lot of experience with carbon markets and carbon offsetting, but I feel like, the carbon insetting space is still, people are not entirely sure what it means and how does it apply to my specific case. But from your perspective of actually working on, real things within this topic area, what do you think the main sort of barrier and the main opportunity is for scaling this more? Maybe if I can ask each one of you.
Yeah, I mean, it's opportunities are behind the commitments and the actual interventions from brands and the entire supply chain. So we see there is a huge growing momentum around adoption of this type of initiative. So a lot of our work is with again with brands and with retailers as well. We see since the last few years great steps forward in terms of concrete adoption of insetting programs at scale. The challenge is defining for those brands, retailers, defining the right way to integrate that insetting within their operations from different angles. It can be a procurement angle, it can be a financing angle, can be a sustainability angle, but the challenge is still working out the best system, the best approach that allows the corporate to effectively drive this insetting forward. Again, there are many pilots, there are so many pilots going on, but what I'm saying is actually making insetting a way to support the supply chain in a scalable way and impactful way. But I see. I was speaking with Joseph earlier. We are still at the early stages in this journey, but I do see that there is tangible signs of things moving towards the right direction. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Great. Enda, your 2 cents?
Yeah, I think if we look at the start of the chain, we've got the farmer. And I think, again, I'd emphasize the point of keeping it simple, keep it practical, bring them with us. And I'd include myself here as sustainability professionals. We love to use acronyms and, fancy language. We need to keep it very, very simple and bring farmers with us, I think, at the start. And I guess for companies like us, because we've obviously have our own internal kind of insetting mechanism, I think the challenge for us then is getting the broader supply chain involved. And I think that the guys have given very good examples of how we can do that. But I guess that's the big challenge for us, is getting the corporates involved. And I think the mechanisms do exist, as the guys have outlined. So, yeah.
And my 2 cents, we've been going for 5 years or so now as a company. And when we began, I feel like the thing that we always asked for was, give us more carbon data and things like this, which is a really useful starting place. However, I think the really important change that has come about, the opportunity I see here, is that this is moving out of a kind of carbon counting game and into a security of supply conversation. And the people that we work with who have the best insetting strategies are using it to do that. So they know that they can get hold of some budget in a retailer or whatever, because there is a net zero target, but then they're using it to really invest in making sure that you can have milk on the shelves whenever you need it, have broccoli. And it's the combining of those two things that means this stuff sticks in a way that's kind of more powerful, I think.
Great. Well, I can only concur with that. I think in the last few years, especially with the price swings we've had on some commodities, it's become clear to some corporates and brands that it's important to map out your supply chain and invest in it. And I think we're also seeing much more action in terms of working in partnerships, both with platforms, with banks, and with suppliers. So much more to talk about. And yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.